Hello, Southwest Florida homeowners and homebuyers. Welcome to the 239 Real Estate Roundtable Podcast, your go-to source for navigating the vibrant real estate landscape of our beautiful region. I'm your host, Kevin Tremmel, a local real estate agent, leader, and investor here in Southwest Florida. On this podcast, we bring you insights from best in the business, top-notch real estate professionals, seasoned agents, and experts of everything from homeowners insurance to mortgages, maintenance, and repairs. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned homeowner, we've got you covered with tips, strategies, and valuable insights to make your journey in Southwest Florida's real estate market a breeze. Get ready to unlock the doors to successful home ownership. This is the 239 Real Estate Roundtable Podcast, where we demystify the process, share insider knowledge, and ensure you're well equipped to make informed decisions. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable Podcast. Today, I am super excited to introduce to you guys John Lee Dumas. He is the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire, an award-winning podcast where he's interviewed over 3,000 successful entrepreneurs to inspire others on their business journey. And as a pioneer in the podcasting space, John has built a multi-million-dollar brand by sharing insights and empowering entrepreneurs to achieve financial freedom and personal freedom. Welcome to the show, John.
Kevin, I am fired up to be here. Let's rock.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for your time. I'm excited for this one. So you've obviously built one of the most successful podcasts out there. Can you kind of take us back a little bit to the beginning and share what inspired you to start Entrepreneurs on Fire?
The year was 2010, and I was in corporate America, after being an officer in the U.S. Army for 8 years, and then law school, and then corporate finance. And I just was kind of sick and tired of the corporate grinds and the trajectory that my life and career seemed to be on. So I started reading all the business books, all the entrepreneurship books, listening to the podcasts that were out there. And I just fell in love with the medium of podcasting. And over a year to 2 years, I just consumed as much as I could in the space of online business of old, podcasting, audiobooks. And through that time, an idea was fomented to launch the first daily podcast in the world, getting to interview the world's most successful entrepreneurs, because I knew the quote was simple. By Jim Rohn, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if I got to interview the world's most successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week, I was going to be spending time with a lot of amazing people, and my average was going to be pretty awesome for all intents and purposes. Yeah. So I dove in head first. I launched Entrepreneurs on Fire back in 2012. I like to recount the day that I launched, it was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs in the world. It was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs in the world. It was the only daily podcast in the world interviewing entrepreneurs. And that, my friends, is one of the secrets to success that I have found for sure. And so here we are now, 12 and a half years later, 4,500 episodes later, 170 million listens later. I've gotten to speak with unbelievable people across generations and decades. And it's been a fun journey, and it's something that I love to do. That's why I still do it. Every single day, an episode goes live on Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Wow, that's amazing. Very inspiring as someone, as a podcast host myself. So a question I had for you was, you've interviewed thousands of entrepreneurs, right? How do you consistently bring value to your listeners and kind of keep things fresh and interesting, so to speak?
You find out what is the area of expertise of that guest. What is that guest amazing at? Where is their skills, their value? And then you let them talk and you just shut up. You let them share their knowledge, their skills, their expertise. If you're ever listening to a podcast that's an interview-based podcast and the host is talking more than 20% of the time, that's a problem, because that guest was brought on for a reason, to share their knowledge, their value, their expertise. And so that's how I keep things fresh. I just make sure that I bring on a guest who is known for something, who's successful at something, who is really great at something, and I have them talk about that thing. I don't try to, quiz them on things they don't know, because I don't care about what they don't know, because it's not going to be any value to me. The value that's going to come to me and to my listeners, Fire Nation, is what they're great at. And hopefully they're only great at really one or two things, because it's really hard to be great at a lot of things. That's why they say a jack of all trades and a master of none. So I just let my guests share their brilliance and I make it easy for them.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned earlier you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? I think you mentioned it a little differently, but that was the gist of it. So kind of after interviewing all these entrepreneurs, thousands of them, what are kind of like the top 3 traits that you see like over and over again that successful entrepreneurs have?
Trait number 1, productivity. Successful entrepreneurs are productive. Now, a lot of people watching are like, oh, that's cool because I'm productive. No, you're not. You're busy. You are busy. You are keeping yourself busy all day doing pointless and useless tasks. And that's why you're not as successful as you could be. Productivity means you are producing the right content. You are producing the right results for you and your business. Very few people do that, which is why very few people are successful at a high level. So if you want to be productive, you produce the right content and the right results. If you're in real estate, you better be producing a heck of a lot of leads, because most of them aren't going to work out. And the ones that do, you have no idea. I'm sure some of your best deals have been from people you've been like, I never thought that person was going to make that deal happen, write that check, do that thing. And it's a numbers game. It is an absolute numbers game. Number 2, discipline. You need to be disciplined. By that, I mean, have a plan of action. Everybody wakes up in the morning and they're like, all right, the day is awaiting me, and they have no idea what's going to happen that day. And so the day just takes control of them and they react all day. I never react. I am always proactive, because I win tomorrow today. Tomorrow has already been planned out for me. It is a plan of action. So I wake up tomorrow morning and I execute that plan of action. I am a disciple to that plan of action. Discipline. And the third thing, focus. Follow one course until success. A lot of people right now, you're struggling because you're trying to do 2 or 3 things and you're doing them all average. Nobody wants average. You're going to blend in. You're just going to be like everybody else. You got to find one thing and be the best at it. And I'll tell you a quick real estate story, because this is a real estate podcast, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I was in real estate back in 2009 in San Diego. And I just moved there. I knew nobody. I had no connections. It's almost impossible to really be successful quickly doing something like that. It takes time. So what did I do? I found a niche that everybody was ignoring: short selling. It's probably become more popular over the years, but back then nobody was doing it. It just wasn't happening. People were just trying to get the big deals. And I literally wrote the book on short selling. It wasn't a great book, but I wrote it and I published it. And so when I went to houses that were about to be foreclosed upon, and I handed them a book that said, hey, I'm the San Diego guy that wrote the book on short selling. I can help you avoid foreclosure. I dominated that niche very quickly because nobody else wanted to get into it. There was so much mind-numbing work to do with banks and back and forth paperwork and faxing and doing all this stupid stuff. But it was because it was painful. It was because it was hard that I was able to get ahead. And I did the same thing just a couple months later in the BPO side of things. Nobody wanted to do BPOs because you got paid $50 and it took all day to do a BPO. Yeah. Well, you know what I did? And since I'm no longer in real estate, you can't, bar me. I hired 13 Filipinos. I trained them how to go to Zillow and to use my MLS login. And I trained them on how to do BPOs. And I paid them $2 per BPO. And I was doing 50 BPOs a day. I just had banks calling me up, just sending me BPOs. You know what 50 times 50 is? Yeah, it's a lot of money when it adds up. Right. That's how I was able to be different, because all the agents I was meeting, BPOs are so stupid. You waste more gas. Yeah, they are if you do them one by one. But I hired a bunch of Filipinos, paid them $2 each. They were thrilled. They were making more money than they can make doing anything else. I was thrilled because I was making hand over fist money doing all the BPOs. And that gold mine lasted for years.
Wow. So sounds like a trend in your journey that I've noticed just talking to you here for the last 10, 15 minutes is you're really good at finding niches, right? Same with the podcast. Like you said, you were the best and worst and only when it first came out, right? podcast of that style.
Listen, the only opportunities are in the niches.
Right.
That's the only opportunities. Because if it's not in the niche, everybody's doing it and your competition is sky high. Right. And whenever people say the words like, but it's hard, what you're recommending me to do is hard. Exactly. Because the higher the barrier of entry, the lower the competition. So I look for things that have the highest barrier of entry. I wasn't going to do a once a week podcast because everybody was doing that. I had to do something that was so hard that nobody else would even try to do. And to this day, I'm the only one doing it.
Wow. Yeah, because it's hard.
Really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't make money for a significant amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as someone that's just starting their podcast journey, what's like a piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you first started Entrepreneurs on Fire?
Frequency is everything, because you're never going to become good at anything doing something once a week. Do you think Kobe Bryant got good at basketball by practicing 1 day a week, 4 times a month? No, he got up every flipping day and he played basketball until his face fell off. That's how you win. It's called putting in the reps. So if there's anything you're going to do and you're going to spend your time doing it, you've got to go all in. You've got to choose that one thing that's an opportunity and just dominate it.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, we used to say, and back in my corporate sales job, like don't chase multiple rabbits, right? Kind of sounds like that's what you're saying as well. Like just get really good, find your niche, and then get really good at that one thing, not be okay and mediocre and average, like you said, at a few things, right? Just get really good at one thing. So where do you see, podcasting obviously has gained in popularity over the last 10, 15 years. Where do you kind of see podcasting heading in the next 5 years or so? Where do you see the future?
AI's so crazy right now that to even think about 5 years from now is like just a fool's errand, because absolutely who knows. I think the next 1 to 2 years of podcasting is going to be very powerful because people are figuring out that they can start a show on one uber niche and be the best in that thing and gain an audience around it. Not a massive audience, but you don't need a massive audience. You just need the right audience, the right people who are listening to your show to make it worthwhile. So that's where it's going. The days of the entrepreneurs on fire just interviewing entrepreneurs, those are over because everybody's doing it. So it's boring. When I started it, nobody was doing it. Now everybody's doing it. So there's no opportunity there, especially when you're starting and you're 1/100th as good of an interviewer as somebody like myself, because I've done 4,500 interviews. I'm just going to be better. I was terrible when I started, but what did I do? I did it every single day. So I got better.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And has there been any, what's been the biggest surprising or unconventional lesson that you've learned from one of your guests?
Unconventional lesson.
Something that really surprised you, or an aha moment, I guess you could call it. Was there anything that really kind of changed the way you think about entrepreneurship?
I'd say it was a quote that one of my guests shared. It was from Albert Einstein, but it really made me step back and be like, oh, that's so true. And I was, really approaching business in a different way up until that point. Right. And the quote is, try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. Mm-hmm. And that's what I had been doing, was just trying to chase success and whatever that looked like. But when I flipped that around and said, oh, I'm just going to provide value, free, consistent value. I'm just going to do that 7 days a week and see where that takes me. And it took me to a multi 7-figure-a-year business, for over a decade. Yeah. So it was, wise words.
Awesome. Yeah. And then to wrap up, this is a new thing where a new format we're trying. I have 3 rapid fire questions for you. So first thing that comes to mind, if you just want to just shout what comes to mind. So first one would be favorite podcast guest of all time on your podcast.
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, cool. It's not a bad one. One book every entrepreneur should read.
The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Okay. And I know you've already mentioned some quotes today, but favorite quote of all time?
I will go back to trying to become a person of success, but rather a person of value, because I feel like that is a good kind of summation of what we've talked about here today, like how can you find a niche that you can just go in and just provide amazing value to that niche, to that audience for free, consistently, and just see what happens.
Yeah. Awesome. And then for our listeners, obviously we'll link all of your website and links to your socials down below. But for our listeners who want to follow your journey or learn from your resources, where would be a good place that they can start?
All the magic is eofire.com. That's where our website is. You can check out my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Awesome. Well, John, I want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate your insights into the world of podcasting and entrepreneurship. And I definitely got some great nuggets on, shifting focus a little bit on my daily planning and execution. So I want to thank you for your time and go get them.
Thanks, Kevin.
Awesome.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussions and gained valuable knowledge to enhance your home ownership journey here in Southwest Florida. A big thank you to our incredible guests and of course to you, our listeners, for joining us. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out. You can find us on Instagram at @KevinTremmel_real estate, on Facebook at Kevin Tremmel Real Estate, or visit our website, kevintremmel.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback is crucial and we're always eager to hear from you. Until next time, this is Kevin Tremmel, your host, signing off. See you on the next episode.